This is a presentation of winter sowing, a method of starting seeds without fancy equipment. I originally presented this at my local Osher Lifelong Learning Institute as a course. And so I wanted to get it recorded and share it with everybody in other directions. A little bit about me. There's my email address. You can email me if you have any questions. I have an Instagram and Facebook group. Oops. Since we don't have anybody here right now and we're just recording, we'll skip this one. This is the original description from the Ollie class that I taught. I'm not going to read it to you, but it's there for information. And I'm going to go over all of this information. Winter Sowing was created by Trudy Davidoff. And she was looking for a way of growing seeds during the winter. So it's planting seeds outdoors in a container during the winter months, and the seedlings emerge in the spring. The container protects it from animals in harsh weather, and it's an ideal environment for germination in the spring. I keep switching to that. It's easy. Anybody can do it. You could even have your kids or grandchildren do it. It's efficient. And it doesn't cost very much. Sorry. I'm gonna get rid of the chat. Sorry. Okay. You don't have to have grow lights on, and you just pretty much plant the seeds, put it outside, and let them grow. You don't need to worry about leggy seedlings. Winter sown seedlings are hardier than other seedlings, so you don't have to worry that you've put them in your windowsill and they got leggy reaching for the light. They're going to be very hardy little seedlings. And another nice thing is you don't have to harden them off before you get ready to transplant them. They've been growing outside, so they're ready to go when they're the right size. And the right size is 2 to 3 inches or 2 to 3 sets of real leaves. And it also gives you something to do in the winter when there's not much going on. I'm going to go over some seed starting basics to get us all on the same page. So the different types of seeds that you can be growing, for the most part, are perennial, something that will regrow every year. And example of that would be Shasta daisies, Rudbeckia, and Shasta daisies are one of the things that I've had the most success with growing in the winter sow method. Hardy annuals are seeds that you plant in the fall to grow in the spring, early spring, and bloom. Think about like pansies, snapdragons, those kind of flowers that like the cooler weather. Actually, I grow flowers, and so you'll hear me talking about flowers a lot, but the same goes for vegetables. I like winter vegetables like broccoli and things like that. Tender annuals are your annuals that grow during the summer heat, like sunflowers and zinnias. There are other ways of starting seeds. You can direct sow them out into the ground and hope the birds and ants and weather, water, and everything lets them grow. And so that's one way of starting seeds. And you can start them inside using seed trays, seed starting heat mat, and lights. Or you could also, and the method I use the most inside is with soil blocks and a heat mat and lights. And then the last one is the winter sowing, which we're going to talk about. which we're talking about today, outside in a milk jug or other container with regular potting soil. So you don't have to have a lot of fancy equipment. So this is a list of the supplies, and I'm going to go over these each individually. The containers that you use for winter sowing are traditionally, it was a milk carton, and but you can also use a clear plastic water jug, obviously lemonade, and the size just determines how many seeds you can put into it. It needs to be translucent, not opaque. Opaque means the light doesn't get through to it. The milk carton is translucent. And so that's what you need. And I did test it out to see if there was any difference between the translucent milk carton and the clear glass or clear plastic, and there wasn't any difference. You also need some kind of method of cutting the container and adding the I use a box cutter, but and scissors, and then you can use the screwdriver by heating it up and adding sorry, adding holes in the bottom, but I also just make slits in the bottom. And then you don't need a special soil, just regular high quality potting soil. So you need some kind of method of keeping track of what seeds you're planting. And you want to use a garden marker and not a Sharpie. So I use a spreadsheet with the information about all of my seeds, and the letters or numbers that you see there match my spreadsheet. I didn't in the beginning put a label on the inside, but I started doing that last year. And that's the first picture you see there. You also, after you plant the seeds, you need tape. And traditionally, it's suggested using duct tape. And I use that. That's over on the left. I use that the first year, and it's very sticky when you remove it. And I decided to try using just regular painter's tape last year, and it was much better. I even got my painter's tape at the dollar store so that it was even less expensive. I think in colder climates, you might need to use the duct tape, but in zone 9, which I am in a warmer climate, painter's tape works fine. And then you need your seeds. There are lots of lists online of different seeds that you can plant using this method. It's more when you plant them. You could try anything and you will have success. And then sometimes you don't have any success, but that's gardening. When you're looking at a seed packet, some things to consider are the height of the plant, the final plant, because you might want, depending on where you're going to put it, you want to know what the height is. The spacing that you're going to use when you plant your seedlings, the depth of planting the seed. There's a general rule of thumb that you plant it twice the size of the seed, and that's true and not true, but you need to look on the packet to see that. And then there's the type of seed that it is: perennial, hardy annual, summer annual. Some things that you can get information is if you're looking at a perennial, it will say so. Oh, sorry. If it says perennial, you want to sow it early to mid-winter, because a lot of perennials need time to cold time before they germinate. They need that kind of period of cold. If it says on the seed packet, start seeds indoors 4 to 6 weeks before the average last frost, that's an indication that you can sow it early to mid-winter. If it says start seeds indoors 3 to 5 weeks before average last frost, you can sow it mid to late winter. And if you have a packet that says direct sow outdoors after all danger of frost has passed, that's probably something you want to wait until the early spring to winter sow. So even though it's called winter sowing, it can be done all year long. You just have to do different things with it. So you're going to prepare your container. In the first picture, you can see I am using my box cutter to make slits in the bottom of so that the water can drain out, because you're going to leave these out in the rain and hopefully rain. And if it rains too much, you want to be able to have them drain properly. So I usually just add some slits in the bottom of my container. And then with the milk carton, you start at one side of the handle and start cutting and go all the way around to the other side so that you leave the top part attached, kind of like a little cover for it. So when you have a container that doesn't have the handle on it, I just pick a place that I want to start, and then I go all the way around and stop, so leaving about an inch or two still attached so that I can keep the lid on there. And then you're going to add your potting soil and your seeds. All of the pictures that I had taken of seeds were sunflowers. I didn't have any of other ones, but we're going to talk about it in the other ones. So I have my seeds on there. Depending on how many seeds you have, you can put 5 in there, or you can plant more. The more you have, the more you're going to have to separate them. A little bit more about seeds. You can see I really sprinkled a lot of them in that first container, and you can do that, and then you just have to divide them. Seedlings are way more resilient than than people think, and you could pull those apart and plant them and they'd be doing fine. The middle picture is a picture of seedlings, and zinnias don't necessarily need to be on the surface, but there are a lot of seedlings that you sow on the surface. And what you can see on the top of this one is vermiculite, and the vermiculite helps a surface sown seed to stay moist. And so I use vermiculite a lot for that. And then you can see another picture there with a lot of seedlings in there. Fresh, healthy seedlings. Label and record keeping. I put the label now inside, and that's nice when I'm getting ready to plant them out. And then I also use either numbers or letters that correspond to my spreadsheet. This is an example of my spreadsheet. I have where it's yellow, it's the date that I started. So you can see I started some seedlings late. There were probably some. I typically start sowing seeds on the winter solstice, which is traditional for winter sowing. But then I continue to sow them as I have containers and have time. And so, and I keep a record. So in this column where it says method, I have the number that corresponds to the container. And I do reuse my containers, but if you leave them out in the sun for too long, they start to really break down. So then you're going to tape your container and get it outside First picture is, they're both the same place. I have some steps that used to lead to a above ground pool, and that's where I put my winter sown containers. You take off the lids, you don't need the lids. The seedlings or the seeds are inside there ready, and you don't need to water if you're getting rain. But if you're not getting rain, you need to monitor them and water if necessary. The first picture, I use my phone to look in and take pictures and see the little seedlings start to come up. And then you can also peek in there and tell if you need water. The other indication that you would need to water is if they're not, if there's not condensation on the top. That kind of means they're dried out. For the most part, mine stay with condensation on them all the time. And when it gets later in the towards spring and it's starting to warm up around here, they dry out a lot faster. And then in the spring, when they are ready to transplant, you just have to get ready and transplant them and put them into your garden. This is a list of more winter sown information. There are a lot of articles. If you just look up winter sowing, you'll find a lot of articles. There's a ton of information on YouTube. And there's also a Facebook group called Winter Sown that you can join and get a lot of information about winter sowing. And this is my contact information again. If you have any questions, you can send it to me.